Welcome to Santiago de Queretaro on Dia de Muertos. I caught the 7 p.m. flight from Tuxtla Gutierrez to Guadalajara, where I met up with my aunt and our friend Natalia. From there, we took a 5-hour bus ride from Guadalajara to Santiago de Queretaro. We arrived on time for the festivities, the streets filled with colorful Catrinas and food stands ready to sell to hungry tourists. It was going to be a night we would never forget. Me especially, because now I could scratch celebrating Dia de Muertos in Mexico off my bucket list. It was something I've been wanting to do for so many years, and here I was, finally, living in that special moment for me. The first thing we did after leaving our bags in our Airbnb was get a quick dinner and caught a tour bus giving us an amazing tour of the city at night, as well as its famous aqueduct. Built in the 18th century, it is 4,200 feet long with 74 arches. Built in a time when water was scarce in Querétaro, it was built by El Marqués, a Spanish rich man who fell in love with a woman from Querétaro. He was in his 50s and married, and she was only 14. In the end, he finished it and ended up going broke in the process. Their love remains as Querétaro's biggest tourist attraction to this day. Way to leave a handprint in the city's history, my friend. It is one beautiful work of art, and I enjoyed every second of it. After the tour, it was time for the festivities to begin. Dia de Muertos was officially on.
Holy crap, it's crowded.
The history of Dia de los Muertos goes back some 3,000 years. The Aztecs, and now while living in central Mexico, held a cycling view of the universe. They saw death as an integral, ever-present part of life. And people to this day still continue to celebrate this tradition, rich in history. As you can see here, various guys explaining different altars. They were all created to represent people that died from different colonies in the area. As the evening continued, so did the festivities, including a parade with Catrinas and zombies, followed by an amazing performance of Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs, Wule Bule, as you're about to see. To finish off the evening, we took a Legends tour. Skits put on by locals in the area portraying Mexican legends. Some of these included the famous La Zacatecana and the most famous one of them all, La Llorona.
El sol de esta tierra jamás volverá a brillar para mí. Mis cabellos negros nunca fueron tan oscuros. Y mi voz siempre estará quebrada. ¡Ya van a dar las 12! Y los hombres temerosos se resguardarán en sus casas. Amor. Mas volvimos a separarnos. Yo mantuve en secreto esta relación para que no fuéramos juzgados por los de mi raza.
This man is the one that anointed me Fray Sombrero. He actually got me involved in one of the skits during the tour. He called me up and said, "Hey, I want you here. Repeat after me." Had me doing the Lord's Prayer in Latin, and then anointed me Fray Sombrero, which is what I call myself now in social media. The next day, we rented a car and drove all the way to Bernal, small pueblo in the Querétaro countryside, where we got to see the Peña de Bernal, the main event, the thing that we came to see the most. It is the world's third largest monolith, right behind Pan de Azúcar in Brazil and the Rock of Gibraltar in the Mediterranean Sea. This is something I've always wanted to see ever since I saw pictures of it a couple years back. So to have the opportunity to finally get to see this in person was something to check off my bucket list. I was ready to climb. The Peña de Bernal has a height estimate of 1,420 feet high.
We're about to start the climb. Prepare your knees, Natalia. You got it, Natalia. You got it.
Natalia was dealing with some knee issues, but looking up at that rock, we were up for the challenge.
This ain't no joke, man. That thing is huge. That is Peña de Bernal, the world's third largest monolith. Have a glimpse.
Natalia's knees gave out, so it was just my aunt and myself left to complete the hike. Will we make it?
Lady Access, where are you?
I've done my fair share of hiking on some high places. What made this hike difficult was not the height, but the heat. This is where my aunt tapped out. We got some shots of the town and got some rest before we headed back down to meet Natalia.
What's that? You think so?
My aunt and I made it safely back down. We met up with Natalia, who was resting at the bottom. Her knees were killing her. It was time to head back to the car and make our way to the next stop, which is a winery, or a vineyard, as people call it. One last look at this giant. Who knows when I'll be back, but at least I finally climbed the Peña de Bernal and took it off my bucket list. We made it to the winery, Viña Doña Dolores. I myself don't drink, but my aunt and my friend do, so I decided to tag along just to see how they make wine. And they even had an altar there for deceased people. After the tour of the winery, it was on to our final destination for the day, a little pueblo mágico called Tequisquiapan. Known for its wine and cheese fare, we headed down to see what we could find. I was hoping to find more cheese, and they were hoping to find more wine. In the end, we found neither. We just had lunch, and then we headed back. It was a beautiful place. After lunch, we decided to head back. But before we did, we stopped by the pueblo of Bernal, which is also a pueblo mágico. I thought that would have been the last time I saw the famous monolith, but I saw it one more time in the dark.
Pan de queso, pan de queso.
Pan de queso.
New mission as we arrived to the pueblo of Bernal. Search for pan de queso, which is cheese bread, and take some night shots of the monolith. It was getting dark, but we didn't mind. It means less people and more time to walk around without worrying about getting run over. What a beautiful town. The pueblo of Bernal was founded in the year 1647 and it has a population of 2,900 people. It's a very small town, but it's worth seeing, and it's so beautiful. It was our final hours in Queretaro the next day, and we decided to take a walking tour on our own to check out one last time the aqueduct and the rest of what the city has to offer. We have made it to the Panteón of Ilustres Queretanos, where it's also the burial site, or the actual tomb, as you see right there, of Josefa Ortiz de Dominguez, who was an insurgent and supporter of the Mexican War of Independence against Spain in Mexico's early years. Here you can see her tomb, laid to rest. And there's Natalia. Ah, yes, the Templo and ex Convento de la Cruz, home to monks, and also where Maximiliano was held prisoner before his execution, as you will see in a couple minutes. There's a rich history here.
De igual manera, él fundó colegios importantes, colegios como el de Guadalupe en Zacatecas, Cristo crucificado en Guatemala y este en el que nos encontramos. Este convento como el primer colegio de propaganda fide en toda Latinoamérica. La palabra fide proviene del latín. Al español se traduce de la fe.
Tours of the place cost 20 pesos per person, which is around $1. But obviously, you have to tip the guide. It's only respectful, right? This is also the end of the line of the aqueduct, as it ends right here inside the ex convento.
Este hermoso patio lleva por nombre el patio de agua. Aquí es donde termina el acueducto de Querétaro. No sé si ya tuvieron la oportunidad de visitar el mirador o conozcan los emblemáticos arcos. Sí. Aquí, si gustan, estamos cerquita de aquí de
The old school clocks that they used back in the day. Incredible. Back then, they used to rely on the sun, as you can see.
en ninguna estación del año. Pero como podemos notar, sí hay ocasiones en las que logra marcar la sombra de la orilla. Erróneamente, pero la llenara para que el agua no se filtrara. La obra en general fue costeada por el marqués del Villa del Villar del Águila, Juan Antonio Urrutia y Yarana. La obra se realizó a petición de una de las monjas del convento de...
Welcome to the kitchen. A very, very old school kitchen. With some clay pots, as well as some molcajetes, where they used to make all sorts of salsas from back in the day.
Aquí, como podemos observar, aún se encuentran algunos de los restos de allí. En las esquinas, en la parte de atrás.
And in here, the refrigerator. It's just a room, and it was actually really cold. This is where they would put their meats, of course, as well, their fruits and vegetables, to keep everything cool and from going to waste. And there's Natalia. She's excited.
¿Qué pasó?
We finally reached the prison cell of Maximiliano. Though it doesn't look like a prison cell, this is where he was pretty much imprisoned in his final days, where he waited for his execution. It was actually a really nice cell, to be honest, with a lot of beautiful paintings, and the furniture is still the original furniture that he used when he was alive.
Está encurvado, tiene rejas y al lado se encuentra una plaquita, muy cerquita de aquí por si gustan ir a visitar. Por ese agujero entra el ejército, pero al entrar...
Our final stop was right here, the Art Museum of Queretaro. The museum was founded on September 22nd, 1988 in the cloister of the former convent of San Agustin. There's a lot of history here as well, and there's also an altar there for Dia de los Muertos in remembrance of the dead. One last stroll through the city center. We were on our way back to our Airbnb to pick up our stuff, head back to the bus stop, and take the bus back to Guadalajara. Another 5-hour trip. But here, we decided to walk one more time and enjoy the city before we took off. And that, my friends, is Santiago de Querétaro. 2 Pueblo Mágicos in one trip, and the Peña de Bernal. I hope you enjoyed this trip.